Hey everyone, so today we're going to discuss the basics of Deep POV. Well, that was what the lesson was on, lesson 14, the basics of Deep POV. And I just really wanted to focus in on one major area. The whole point of Deep POV, which is deep point of view, is to narrow the narrative distance. You want to shrink the narrative distance, meaning that the reader doesn't want to be narrated to. They don't want you to tell the story to them like you're sitting across the table from them having coffee or having lunch. Okay, if I'm going to tell a story that way, it's going to sound completely different than if I'm reading the story. If I'm reading the story, I'm completely engrossed in it. I am engaged in it. I have put on the character's skin of whoever's POV that I'm reading at the time, right? Does that make sense? So on the lesson, on thewritenook.com, lesson 14, where it talks about the basics of Deep POV, it has several illustrations on there and things that you can look up so that you understand a little bit more about it. Today I want to tell you about a really great reference book. It's one of my favorites on Deep POV. It's simple, it's easy to understand it, and it's really cheap on Amazon. And it's by Jill Elizabeth Nelson, fabulous writer. She's a great lady. I love her to pieces. And it's called Riveting Your Readers with Deep POV. Absolutely fabulous book. I love it. I recommend it every time that I teach on Deep POV. So why don't we talk about just giving an illustration of what Deep POV really is. To show you the difference is to make you think about how a character would know that there were geese flying overhead. If you were reading this, would you want to read, "He saw geese fly overhead"? It's kind of dull and boring, right? So how can you show it? This is actually an exercise that I use in a class when I teach about Deep POV, because I ask them all to write how they would show that the character notices geese flying overhead. I think one of the best illustrations is if there's a splat. And what is the splat? A goose has pooped on somebody as they're walking, and obviously that's going to draw your attention and make you look up. What else could happen? What is part of the senses that could bring a character to know that there's geese flying overhead? They could hear the honking of the geese. What if the geese are flying low? Are they going to feel the wind made by the wings of the geese as they're flying overhead? Have you ever been right by a lake or a grassy area where a flock of geese are taking off because you've scared them? Oh my goodness. Your hair will stand up on end because the wind that is produced by their wings is actually really, really mighty. So use the senses and think about that. You don't want to tell. Deep POV, the whole point of the majority of it is the fact that it shows rather than tells. Don't tell the reader that the geese are flying overhead. Show them how the character knows, how they see, what brings the geese to their attention, and they see them flying overhead. So there's just a little snippet, but make sure that you go to lesson 14 on thewritenook.com under CW101, which is the creative writing course, and make sure you look for the basics for Deep POV. And we continue on with this, and you'll be able to see more and more as we go on in the lessons, but make sure you kind of have a grasp of this so that you can really learn how to write in Deep POV. That is the best way to write.